Righto, this video is just a quick update on my BL. We have been doing a lot of work to Brad's lately, so stay tuned for a video about that one. But basically, after my drag racing video, if you haven't watched that, check it out. We got a few questions about bits that sort of happened in there. So obviously towards the end, I ran out of fuel pressure, which was due to a low fuel tank. So I think I put like 35 litres in it once I got to the servos. So I'm no expert, but with the engine running lean, the knock sensors hopefully picked that situation up and reduced the timing so as not to damage the engine. So yeah, so as far as I'm aware, we didn't wreck anything by running lean then, and the engine protection did what it was supposed to do. So it was under half, between a half and a quarter maybe, full. Obviously the swirl pot's not filling up as quickly as it should. So it's got the Bosch 255 fuel pump in there, which is good for 500 horsepower. But yeah, you lose fuel pressure at anything under sort of a third of a tank, especially when you're like accelerating or on an angle or whatever, going around corners probably. Not entirely sure how to fix that one, apart from getting like a swirl tank in the boot or something like that. If you got any ideas, let us know. But yeah, I mean, to get around that, I'm just going to have to keep it over half, keep it full. The other feedback we got was about the suspension of the car. So obviously the back, and you can see it in the videos, is quite low. It probably sagged a little bit from the original height that we set it at when we put the BC Racing coilovers in there. So it is sitting quite low on the back, and there wasn't a lot of room for the suspension to squat down during the takeoff, leaving the line at the drags. So the feedback to get the Pro Street radials to hook up was to lift the rear ride height a bit more, and then that way you can have a bit more squat as it comes down, which is easy to do because we've got the adjustable coilovers. So that's one thing I got to do. Once I do set the ride height a little bit, I do have to check the pinion angle of the diff. So I mean, I wasn't expecting to run 11.6, so pretty stoked with that. But with those quicker times, you start to find the weaknesses in your driveline. So I don't want to go ruining my diff if I can help it. So basically got an angle gauge, and I'll be using that to measure the driveline angle, the angle of the engine gearbox, and the angle of the diff. So if they need setting up, I'll have to get some adjustable upper control arms. Not really sure how I'm going to check that pinion angle or the angles under the car yet, because we've only got a 2-post hoist. That obviously allows the wheels to droop down, so you need the wheels to be in like a normal ride height. I do need to get the tune redone just to suit the auto and the higher stall, so just get the tuner to just take it for a drive and check it on the dyno and whatnot, just to make sure that tune's going right with the auto. While he's in there, I'll probably get him to lift the rev limiter. So I don't think you really need too many mods to raise the LS1 rev limiter. Even 6.5 would probably make a big difference for me, but I've heard of people going to 7 or more just by doing valve springs and whatnot. Yeah, not exactly sure what I'd like to set it to there yet. Give us a yell if you've got any recommendations. Yeah, we'll get the tuner to review the power trend, like the dyno results, and just see if it's even worth raising the rev limiter to. Like if it's not making any power after 6,000 RPM, it's not worth it, but I'm pretty sure it was last time. So power had peaks by 6,000, but it wasn't necessarily dropping off rapidly either. So hopefully it's worth it. I'll get him to have a look at that. While we're still talking about drags, yeah, so obviously you've got the Turbo 400 now with the 3-speed instead of a 6-speed. So with the high stall, it obviously worked really well. A couple of questions about what diff gears I have. So yeah, obviously LS1 Turbo 400, and they've got and the diff's currently got 345s in it. So I was shifting at about 6,000 RPM, and still have the factory rev limiter of 6.2. And when I was crossing the line, I was basically at 6,000 RPM over the line. So not a lot of room there for more speed or more RPM as it is. Because the engine will be revving hard, and just because it's got that stalling now, it obviously spends a lot more time revving harder. So we'll have to look at the breathing system for the engine. So off the valve covers, you've got the little breather hoses that currently go, it's all It's all factory at the moment. It's got the little PCV, goes in back into the throttle body or back into the inlet manifold. I stuck a camera down the inlet manifold. There's no oil in there or anything like that, so there's no real signs that the engine's got a lot of blow-by or leaking any oil vapor into the engine, but it would just be a good thing for the future just to have a better breathing system. So I have to sort out a catch can for it. So when you start digging in catch cans, you're talking about the size of the breather lines and whatnot, and then you look at the factory valve covers, and they're sort of, you can either weld on a bigger fitting for the breathers for that or use a smaller fitting. So once you start diving into that, you look at custom valve covers. When you start looking at custom valve covers, you start looking at coil relocations or coil upgrades and whatnot. Then you start looking to relocating the coil somewhere completely different. Yeah, so it's sort of something I've got to plan from the beginning and get everything right where I want it to be, and then start ordering parts rather than going and doing a rocker breather system with dash 6 size fittings and then want to go to dash 8 or dash 10 later on. I will end up relocating the coils, I think. I'm not really sure whether they'll end up in the panel where the wiper motor is yet, or down under the engine somewhere. I'm not really sure. Once again, if you've got any advice, let us know. Yeah, so after the drags, everything was going good. There was no issues with the car at all. Did a formal run or a prom run for a high school, and yeah, everything's going fine. There was no issues with the car at all. And then I was driving it to work one day, and it started making a noise in the gearbox sort of drive shaft area. Yeah, not a very nice noise. It's like a real crunching and grinding right down below the trans itself. Obviously your mind starts wondering where all the things that it could be damaged there. It didn't seem to be slipping inside the gearbox or anything like that, but it was just this really horrible noise under load. So we ended up taking a couple of videos and then going on a Turbo 400 builders Facebook page, and just to throw it out there and go, look, this is what's going on, what do you reckon? And straight away, like 90% of the feedback was, you've done the bush in the rear housing. So I'm YouTubing rear housing on a Turbo 400, and there's all these videos of it, a Turbo 400 all pulled apart and whatnot, so I'm stressing out that it's going to be something bad like that. Turns out it was the bush in the rear housing. So this is the rear housing. This is the actual rear housing from my Turbo 400. And that obviously just, like, your tail shaft sits in there, and that's your cross member, rear cross member. So 6 bolts and this comes off, so you don't need to take the whole gearbox out of the car to fix it. And in there is supposed to be a bush. So the feedback was from the people on that Facebook page was it just slides off the shaft. It slides off inside the gearbox and then just flops around in there and makes noise when you accelerate. Why it fell out, I don't know. So that's it there. It's supposed to live in there. What made it slide out, I'm not really sure. And then obviously the tail shaft was just sitting on the seal, which would have elongated the seal and made a bit of play and sloppiness around. So it did look bad initially when you just grab it and shake the output shaft, and it was quite loose. Yeah, so it just so happened someone local, so I'm talking to people from America about this gearbox issue, and someone local, another guy, doesn't live too far away from me, he's doing an LS swap in early Commodore as well, and he just happened to have a spare rear housing for a Turbo 400. So he sends me a message and said, hey, do you want to borrow this to sort out your issues? So within less than a day of putting this post up on Facebook, on what's mostly an American Facebook group, yeah, so I grabbed this spare one off old mate, and thank you very much. And yeah, basically pulled the drive shaft out of mine, pulled the rear housing off, and it's literally exactly what they said, and even posted videos about on this Facebook page. Just as it come off, there's the bush just sitting there on the shaft, and obviously when you accelerate it moves back and forth and grinds on the gears and whatnot. So it wasn't good, but yeah, it would have only done a couple of Ks like that, so we shouldn't have done any damage. Measured his one up, it was exactly the same as mine, threw it in, and no oil leaks, no noises, everything's fine. So really happy with that outcome. Stressing that it could have been a gearbox or a drive shaft or both. Ended up being just a bush. So I think it was a $50 kit for a new gasket, new bush, new seal, and yeah, the next job is to tap the new one in to there, and that problem will be all fixed. So also related to the higher RPM that it does now, I will look at the sort of the valve train and just double check that that's all healthy. Like it is, when I bought it, it was supposed to have the trunnion upgrade on the rocker arms. So I'll probably pull the valve covers off anyway and have a look at that, make sure there's nothing loose in there. The valve train is a little bit noisy, it always has been. Over the 12 months that I've owned it, I don't think it's gotten any worse, but it is tappy. Yeah, so I'm just thinking it might be safer to identify something proactively now than wait for it to break at the drags or whatever, and then drop a valve and rebuild a whole LS1. So there's a few things going on there. Start taking valve covers off and upgrading valve covers and coil relocations and catch cans or whatever. So there's a little bit to go there. When I did run the 11.6, I was just super stoked. I was like, I'm completely happy. That's going to satisfy me for ages. And then I was sort of looking at the times, and you think, well, really to get better times, you've got to hook up better. So I'm looking at the suspension, and then a little bit more power wouldn't hurt to run a lower 11. So then you look at what do I need to do to get a bit more power. So it already has a biggish cam in there. It's got the right size inlet manifold and ported throttle body. Cylinder heads. Cylinder heads seem to be the way to go to just get that little bit more power, a little bit quicker down the track. So I think, like, it's got the standard 241 heads on it, so the 243 heads are a pretty common upgrade. So I'm sort of looking at going the 243 route. Whether I have a go at porting them myself, that's an option, but just from factory those 243s will flow a lot better than the 241s. It's been proven. So yeah, if you've got any suggestions, let us know, but that'll be something I'll be exploring for this car in the near future. Last thing we did is obviously we did the auto upgrade, and so I had a 3D printed factory looking decal that suited the new Turbo 400 shift pattern. So that looked really good, but it didn't light up. So if you hand in the car to a dyno or somewhere to get the air conditioning done and someone else has to drive it, which is always a little bit scary. They don't know that it's 2 clicks to get it into reverse from park and all that sort of stuff. So it was always something I planned to do, is to put one of those Dakota Digital sender boxes in. So I did that recently. That was pretty easy to do. I ended up mounting the variable resistor arm thingy just in front of the shifter box, the drop box, and then used the little rod that they gave us straight onto the B&M shifter, where a lot of people do it. I ended up just using a ring terminal and then just soldering the thread onto that so it wouldn't come loose. Yeah, it was nice and skinny, fit right in there. There's not a lot of resistance in that sender unit anyway, so that should work well, and it all fit underneath the center console when it was reinstalled. So once that was installed, then I just had to tune that little box to what the shift points were, which is pretty easy. Instructions are pretty good. And then I just mounted that little box down on the drop box itself on the right hand side of the shifter mechanism. Yeah, and it all just sort of squeezed in there, wired up the lights. And yeah, you can see there now that all works really good. So one thing I haven't done yet is hooked up the lights to it. Maybe if you're driving at night, it might be a little bit bright. So, but apart from that, it looks really good. So yeah, that's basically the auto conversion sort of finished off there. So I'm pretty happy with that. One other thing about that Dakota Digital box is once it's tuned, it obviously displays the lights on the shifter surround, but there is rumours that the Haltech IC7 Dash upgrade could have another input there that would accept gear positions. So obviously if you've got a Haltech ECU running your engine, that's easy to do. There's a lot more inputs available, but with the Dash, the way I've got it, I think it can only accept 4 inputs. So I either trade one of them that I'm currently using for a gear position, or hopefully the new upgrade can accept some more. So yeah, it could end up having the park, neutral, reverse, whatever, up on the dash as well, so that'd be cool. Yeah, so thanks for watching. That's a quick update on my car. Should be a video coming out on Brad's soon. There's a lot of work's happening with that one, and yeah, see you in the next one.